I did spend 10 years of my life flying supersonic fighters, but it took me 10 years to figure out that the Air Force wasn't going to use any of those incredible suggestions that I'd made on how they could really improve their organization. And so I said, well, it's about time for me to really shape the Air Force up. And so I sent in my resignation knowing that would really get their attention, and they signed it. And I was a civilian overnight trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So I went out to the West Coast to fly with the airlines, knowing they would be ecstatic to get a hold of the hottest thing in the skies. Wrong. They loved me as long as I was talking to them on the phone. They thought I was the best thing that had happened. They said, my gosh, 2,400 hours of high-performance fighter time, a test pilot, air show pilot, never had an accident, kind of guy we want with this airline. We're going to mail you an application. Well, I'd already found out that I had a problem with the airlines, and maybe you already figured out what the problem is. And I said, now, before you waste a stamp mailing me an application, I better ask you another question. They said, what's that? I said, what are the height requirements for flying with your airline? They said 5 feet 8. I said, what a coincidence. That happens to be my goal. A goal I'm obviously still working on. I thought, well, where am I going to go and what am I going to do now? I guess I'm going to have to go sell something. You heard in my introduction that I was known throughout the Air Force as the sonic boom salesman, because it had been my job not only to go out and do a lot of high-speed supersonic testing, a lot of it right here in Arizona, by the way. And I thought, then I had to go out and explain to these upset civilian hostile audiences why sonic booms were good for them. Now, you may think you've sold a product with a high objection factor. Try one of those sometime. So I joined this big sales company. I sold for a year. At the end of the year, I looked at what I'd earned. I said, that's not bad. I earned more selling than I'd ever earned as a test pilot on hazardous duty pay, and I didn't have to worry about getting killed that year in selling. Well, I can't say that totally. There were a couple of customers that year I wasn't real sure about. I wasn't into customer service like I am now, but I thought, this is a pretty good thing. Well, at the end of that year of selling, the company came to me and said, now today we'd like for you to manage one of our sales offices. I said, starting when? They said, this afternoon. They put me through their entire management training course while I was standing there. And maybe some of you have been through similar courses. But I went out there in that little office, and I sat out there in that little sales office for a year behind the manager's desk. Had a nameplate there, it said manager. Set it on the door. And in case there was any doubt, I wore a name tag also that said Danny Cox, manager. Obviously, I was the manager. Had no idea what I was doing, but obviously I was the manager. Why the company made this next move, I can't tell you. But they came to me and said, Danny, now that you got a year of selling and a year of management under your belt, we would now like for you to be the manager of our top sales office out of our 36 office chain. And I said, how quickly you folks notice leadership talent. Still didn't know what I was doing, but I thought they must know and it must be right. Well, I could hardly wait to get back to that top office, because that's also where I'd been a brand new salesperson that first year out of flying. Now, you cannot even begin to imagine how those top people in that #1 office who remembered me as the brand new guy from the year before, the rookie from the year before, now welcome me back as the boss. You can't imagine, eh? Yeah, they hated me with a passion. I kept saying to them, don't think of me as the boss, just think of me as a friend who's always right. Did you ever work for anybody like that? But you see, I made a mistake. I tried to get all my salespeople to be me. My goal was to turn everybody into a carbon copy of Danny Cox. Wasn't that a wonderful plan? You can imagine how well it worked. I took that office from first place, you're ahead of me, huh? To 36 out of 36 offices in 3 months' time. Totally wiped that son of a gun out. Bet you're glad you came in for this morning, right? When you as a manager, people start to pull into your parking lot in the morning and you find out that your salespeople have arrived there early on purpose and blocked all of the entrances with their cars, that's a bad sign for the manager. The modern day version, no doubt, of circling the wagons like they did out here in the Old West a few years back, right? I'd gotten to the point where I was afraid to just go out and stick the key into the ignition of my car till I checked all the wiring. Matter of fact, when I got ready to go home at night, I used to send my lowest producer out to start my car while I watched from a safe distance. Well, it was the only incentive plan I had.
The supersonic fighter is like an organization of talented people. You can get a lot out of it if you know how to handle it. If you push it too high, too fast, and place unrealistic demands on it, The whole organization, like my airplane, can tumble out of control right out of the sky. I did just that in my airplane, as well as in the office I managed. Only 3 pilots out of 9 before me had survived one of those violent pitch-ups. When my office was going down in flames, it didn't look like I was going to be able to pull out before I crashed and burned.
I was in big trouble. And about that time, my boss came out to see me with a terse little message that really got through. He said, "I certainly made a mistake by making you a manager, and I feel it only fair to let you know I am now looking for your replacement." I said, "Now right there is not only the shortest, but the finest motivational seminar I've ever attended." I said, "I'm going to have to learn how to do this." He says, "You don't have much time." I said, "Well, you have no idea how motivated I am." Well, I went to work on me, not them.
To pull out of the pitch-up in my fighter, I popped the drag chute, got the air flowing over the wings again, and stabilized the aircraft after tumbling 30,000 feet. At the office, I also stopped trying to force the controls. When I backed off and started working on improving me, the downward spiral stopped, and we all started to climb again. My audiences love to hear how an ordinary person like me faced so many life-threatening situations and lived to tell the story. When I share my disasters, narrow escapes, and successes in the business world, everyone in the audience relates to a crisis or challenge that he or she has personally faced. Whenever I give programs on leadership, customer service, or personal high performance, people go away with a desire to break old habits and try new things.
But it turned out I didn't lose my job. 120 days later, we're back up the top. We could hardly wait to get back to the top. Why? Well, so we could say we're back to number 1, but also so we could all go, and ease off. Now, if you'd been charting that production during that time, before I took over, way up there at number 1, Cox takes over, bottoms out, back up 120 days later, if we'd have kept on thinking the same way, that would have probably plateaued out one more time, and you'd be listening to somebody else here tonight besides me. We started talking about that phenomenon. What is that thing where you get up to a certain way you do your job, and then you quit getting better, no matter where your productivity is in your job? You can plateau out. We chose to call it a self-imposed barrier. My definition of a self-imposed barrier is this. Self-imposed barrier is not a wall around your life, just a margin in your life, where you haven't written anything. Yet, good is the enemy of best, and best is the enemy of better. When we get good at something, we have a tendency to say, why do I need to extend the extra effort to get to be best? When we get to be best, we have a tendency to say, why do I need to extend the extra effort to continue to get better? That's when we need to get better more than any other time. Why? When contentment sets in, progress stops. It's just that simple. So we have to continue to push, to continue to grow, continued improvement, as you've been talking about here. You keep getting better at what you do. Well, as it turned out, we went on to break office records, company records, industry records. We got articles written about us calling us the best office of that kind anywhere in America. Now, I don't know if we were that good or not, but I do have a tendency to believe any positive newspaper article that mentions my name. And I said, someday I want to go out and talk about this. Well, that's what I've been doing, sharing these ideas nationwide with all sorts of corporations, all sorts of industries. And I always get asked, where did you find your great people? Well, they're right there all along. We all got better at what we did, but we all also started thinking long term. How do we build a clientele? Not just to make this next month's sales or get through this next month's problems, but how do we continue to grow and develop? I had a saleswoman that worked for me. She'd broken every single record in the company that I was with there. She had 1,200 salespeople. She was number 1, of course, out of my 143 people in my district, but then number 1 in the company, number 1 in the nation. I've never seen anybody could beat her record. She was outproducing offices full of salespeople. Absolutely office. I'm talking like 22 or 23 salespeople, total up an average office production, and she could beat them. And I said to her one day, I said, Chris, how do you do it? She just twinkles when she talks. She says, God didn't make me with an off switch. Didn't even come with one of them things. Oh, I love it.
And I learned that every single day we stand at the crossroads of our life. Every day, yep, we don't miss a day. But let me show you what that road looks like. You see, it's not a square crossing the road. It's a Y in the road. And every single day, you stand right there at that Y. And you decide. You're probably saying, he's not only short, he's got little bitty hands, right? Every day you decide, do I grow and develop in my job, or do I what? Do it the way I've... Then let me show you where that road goes in case you get in that habit. So that every day you stand where? Just exactly where were the day before, exactly where the day before, exactly where the day before, exactly where the day before. I call that repeating yesterday. I've seen organizations, I've seen clubs, I've seen companies get into that habit of just going in and repeating yesterday. Some companies I've seen and organizations I've seen as I've traveled around the country the last few years, that'd make a pretty good logo for them. What are down these roads? Over here, new goals. What about over here? No goals. New goals versus no goals. If you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning because you have no new goals. Every day is repeated the day before. What's your goal today? I'm going to go in and repeat yesterday. How was yesterday? Not too good. Then why do it? Well, it's my habits, you see. Do you know that habit has a goal? Habit's goal is to freeze you at your current level of competence, what you do. Habit works on you incessantly. Habit says, stop, 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 this is good enough. Come on, stop, this is good enough. We finally say to habit, why should I quit getting better at what I do? Habit says, look, you quit getting better at what you do, I will make you feel like you know it all. Feel? Except habit doesn't emphasize the word feel. But I'm emphasizing the word feel. Habit says you quit getting better at what you do, you'll be able to go to conventions and training programs and seminars and fold your arms and get this all-knowing look on your face. And everybody there will say, oh, look, that person knows it all. If you get into this habit of repeating yesterday, you got to understand one thing. High point of your life's already behind you. You've already experienced it. It's already gone. That's what we're here to talk about. I found out these high performers are so good at working priorities. Well, look what else that gives you. It gives you stability under pressure, and therefore excellent at problem solving. So if you're really good at working priorities, you have time to do the other things, your avocations as well. Good at working priorities. Notice I didn't just say setting priorities. I will not ask for an embarrassing show of hands here, but have you ever made the correct priority list of things you need to get done that day in proper order, and then locked up your jaw with grim determination and dived into that priority list at about item number 5? What about 1 through 4? Those are hard. You know what the great high performers taught me? They said you start at number 1, and when you get through with number 1, you don't go to number 2. I said, what do you go to? They said, the new number 1. And when you get through with that one, not to number 3 on your list, but to the new number 1. You get all the way to the bottom of the list. One thing left to do. Have you ever seen anybody like that? They hit it with the same intensity. One thing left to do. What's the number on it? 1, the same thing. And you see, that's the way these great ones are. When you work on number 2 on your list, like it's number 2, and number 3, like it's number 3, there's a drop-off in quality as you go through the day. Now, I know this is heavy philosophy to hit you with here today, but you see, we said it back home this way. When we talked about priorities there in those Ozarks, we said it this way: if you've got a frog to swallow, don't look at it too long. And if you got more than one to swallow, swallow the biggest and first. Them things will kill you. They're courageous people. They're not afraid to step out boldly. They're not afraid to put the other foot down. You know, it's like, some people go through life with one foot dangling in the air. What are they waiting for? For everything to be right before they try anything new. That'd be like saying, I'm going to drive all the way across Dallas, but I think what I'll do is wait till all the lights are green first.